So everything the Buddha taught was taught in the context of dependent origination and Four Noble Truths to gain insight, very specific insight into three marks of existence. Impermanence, the not self characteristic, and the resulting dukkha, the resulting stress and suffering that follows from misunderstanding the first two. And that's significant in that it relates to this sutta, but it relates to everything the Buddha ever taught, was to gain that specific insight. And again, it's not a generalized insight into impermanence in the way it's normally seen as, well, I understand that trees are impermanent and political parties are impermanent and mountains are impermanent. And that's all true, but that's not insight into the three marks of existence and their interrelationship. That's what the Buddha teaches to develop through a well-concentrated mind. So last week's sutta on the Kula Sakaka Sutta, the Buddha was debating a Jain, Sakaka, about what is his Dhamma about. And so that what he ended up telling Sakaka and all of us is that his Dhamma is about recognizing the three marks of existence within something called the five clinging aggregates. We're coming up with a lot of lists, and that can be confusing. But the five clinging aggregates, form, feeling, perceptions, mental fabrications, and consciousness, meaning ongoing thinking rooted in ignorance of Four Noble Truths, not some grand cosmic consciousness. Those are the five clinging aggregates. Those describe the personal ongoing experience of suffering rooted in ignorance of Four Noble Truths. Is that clear? And so in that way, the five clinging aggregates are also a teaching on the three marks of existence, aren't they? Because impermanence, the not self characteristic, and suffering is a part of five clinging aggregates, right? Okay. So when we're talking about something as specific as that, when a question relates to that or should relate to that within the Dhamma, the only way to answer it is with fidelity to the Dhamma, correct? So again, we're not talking about just trying to find a way to make people feel good by maybe further distraction or telling them if you do 100 push-ups in the next life, you'll get rewarded for that. But a lot of what we learn in spirituality is just that way. I'll change something in me now and I'll gain the benefit of it in the future. The Buddha realized if you take that, he taught to understand what's occurring and gain the benefit of human life right here, right now. It's not a game of, the popular phrase is paying it forward in that sense. I'm just talking about the Dhamma now. The Dhamma is an immediate experience of what we're holding in mind. And if what we're holding in mind is rooted in ignorance of Four Noble Truths, we'll experience distraction, stress, and suffering. So when the question comes up, put to the Buddha, and I also should say, this is in relation to teaching the Dhamma or living within the Dhamma. It doesn't mean that we find someone who's having a rough day and we try to console them. That's not what this is about. Meaning we look to help somebody feel a little better in the moment. In reference to the Dhamma, in reference to reality, we have to maintain fidelity to the Dhamma if we're to develop it. We can't cut corners here. We have to speak in right speech. Okay, let me get to the sutta. This is the Abhaya Raja-Kumara Sutta to Prince Abhaya. On one occasion, the Buddha was staying at the squirrel sanctuary in the bamboo forest near Rajagaha. A local prince, Prince Abhaya, went to the Jain, Nagantanatha. The Jain religion was a popular religion during the Buddha's time and is still in existence and practice all over the world today. It's not a major religion, but it's been ongoing for 2,600 years. And it's often seen as a very similar religion to the Buddha's religion, but that's only when you relate it to Tibetan Buddhism, because both of the Jain religion and Tibetan Buddhism have more, have shamanic roots to them. They're nature, animal, spirit-based religions, where the Buddha taught something completely different. And the Jain religion is loosely based on the Vedas and the Upanishads, the precursor to modern Hinduism, which the Buddha rejected. The prince approached Nagantanatha, bowed and sat to one side. Nagantanatha said to Prince Abhaya, if you would refute teachings of the mighty, in quotes, he's mocking the Buddha, If you were to refute the teachings of the mighty and powerful Gautama the contemplative, an admirable reputation of you will spread far. So look at what Nataputta, this is the leader of a major religion. He knows everything about it. He's apparently practicing it. And he says the most important thing you can do is not teach something that's helpful, but gain a reputation by what you're saying. That's the most important thing. And if they get, now, if you go out and you start saying some things, no matter whether they're true or not, hurtful or not, and people follow you, you've just gotten all the validation you need to continue, haven't you? You've fabricated the whole experience in your own mind. And no matter how many people you might convince that way, your teachings are really based on maintaining a reputation rather than anything else. Venerable Sir, and the prince bought into it initially. Venerable Sir, how will I refute the teachings of the mighty and powerful Gautama? Come now, Prince. Gautama the contemplative is at the squirrel sanctuary in the bamboo forest near Rajagaha. When you see him, ask him this. Would you say words that are not endearing or disagreeable to others? As if that's a benchmark of something valuable, just because it makes people feel good or is pleasing. If the answer is that he would say words that are not endearing or are disagreeable to others, then you say to him, then how is there any difference between you and any ordinary run-of-the-mill people? So again, he's saying that the most important thing is to make people feel good. Tell them something that they want to hear. And again, the Buddha realized the cruelty of that. However, Prince, if Gautama the contemplative answers that he would not say words that are not endearing or disagreeable to others, then you say to him, then why do you say that Devadatta is headed for deprivation, a living hell beyond redemption? Devadatta was upset at these words. Devadatta was the Buddha's cousin who tried to kill the Buddha twice and came pretty close to it. And when that was done, the Buddha used the situation as a teaching situation for the entire sangha. And basically he said, look at this evil person based not on what Devadatta is, but based on his actions. Actions describe what a person is thinking, doesn't it? And so it's a perfect teaching experience. Devadatta didn't like the words, but they were truthful words, weren't they? And they were also helpful to Devadatta if he wanted to listen, and to the entire sangha. So you'll see how they fulfilled the requirement. And also this type of thinking, this type of teaching is called teaching via negativa, via the negative. What it means is that we're not insisting on not seeing a complete picture. And it flies in the face of this idea that everything is positive or has a positive result in it ultimately. There's something wonderful and sacred underneath everything, even hatred, even aversion, even greed. Of course there isn't. But we're taught that we should think that way, that we should always see the positive, always talk about the positive, never look at the negative. The Buddha realized the incredible cruelty of that, because what does it do? It simply continues ignorance of Four Noble Truths. It maintains that powerful veil of ignorance through this idea that everything is wonderful, through rose-colored glasses. And I'm not saying that we should see everything as awful. It's not. But in order to see things clearly, we have to see all things clearly, don't we? Including our immediate experience of what's occurring in this moment. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Thank you. So the counter argument to the Buddha is you said something that was hurtful towards somebody. Again, this is how I'm going to debate the Buddha, because he said something that upset somebody. And I've heard that. I mean, I've had people say to me, I read your article, and some words aren't, it doesn't piss me off. Sometimes they're worse than that. And I'm saying, it wasn't my intention, but this is simply what the Buddha taught. And nobody has to listen to it, do you? But if you want to develop the Buddha's Dhamma, you have to have the courage and the right effort to look at things clearly. When you ask Gautama the contemplative this two-pronged question, he won't be able to swallow it or spit it out. It will be as if he swallowed a two-horned chestnut that became stuck in his throat. And again, this is another spiritual leader that is gleeful over what another spiritual teacher might encounter. A two-pronged chestnut stuck in his throat, and he's happy about that. That tells you a little something about somebody's mindfulness too, doesn't it? Prince Abhaya responds, as you say, Lord. He left Naganta not to, with respect, and that simply means he bowed, and went to Buddha. On arrival, he bowed to the Buddha and sat to one side. As the prince was sitting with the Buddha, he thought, this is not the time or place to confront Gautama the contemplative. I will invite him to my house, to my territory, and refute his words there. Great teacher, would you join me with 3 of your sangha members for tomorrow's meal? The Buddha accepted the offer by his silence. The prince left with a show of respect. Excuse me. The next day, the Buddha adjusted his inner robe and took his alms bowl and outer robe and left for Prince Abhaya's home. Upon arrival, he sat on a seat prepared for him. Prince Abhaya served the Buddha and his friends a lavish meal. The Buddha finished his meal and removed his hand from his bowl. He's done. The prince then sat on the lower seat to one side of the Buddha and addressed the Buddha. Would you say words that are not endearing or are disagreeable? The Buddha responds, there is no categorical yes or no answer to your question. There's no absolute or definitive answer. Depends on the situation. And when you read the suttas, you realize that every sutta the Buddha gave follows and flows from his great understanding of the situation and the people involved. It's really remarkable when you see that. Well, Gautama, you have just refuted the Nagantas. Just yesterday, Naganta Nataputa told me to find you and ask if you would use words that are not endearing or are disagreeable. He said you would choke on the answer as if you had swallowed a 2-horned chestnut. At that time, a baby was lying on the prince's lap. The Buddha asked Prince Abhaya, if this baby was neglected and swallowed a piece of gravel, what would you do? I would remove it. If I could not remove it easily, I would hold his head with one hand and reach into the baby's throat to remove it. And even in the translation, the next few lines talk about even if the baby became bloody and I tore his throat, and it got a little bit too graphic to understand it. It really is not necessary. The prince continues, this may hurt the baby, but would save his life. And that was what all the other things were about. I would do this out of sympathy for the baby. Anybody would, or most people would, wouldn't you? In the same way, the Buddha said that. In the same way, out of sympathy for others, words that I know to be false, unendearing, disagreeable, or not helpful in developing the Dhamma, I do not say them. Notice what he's saying here. The words that aren't true, they're unendearing, they're disagreeable, and they're not helpful in developing the Dhamma, I do not say them. In the same way, out of sympathy for others, words that I know to be true, but likewise unendearing, disagreeable, and not helpful to developing the Dhamma, I do not say them. So there's plenty of situations where people might say things that are not true, but they're being said in a way to make you feel good, and they don't lead to understanding the Dhamma. Keep your mouth shut. Practice noble silence. There may be words that are true and will make you feel good and keep you coming back for more, but they don't lead to understanding. The Buddha says, I keep my mouth shut at that point. In the same way, and notice the Buddha keeps qualifying this by saying, I do this out of sympathy for other people. Not out of I-making for myself, not trying to make me well known. I'm acting out of sympathy, just like you were doing with that baby. When you reached into his throat and pulled out that gravel, it was painful for the baby. But that initial pain, that initial discomfort, saved the baby's life. The Buddha's using that metaphor as saying this is just as important as taking that gravel out of that baby's mouth. Teaching the Dhamma and learning the Dhamma in an authentic way from an authentic teacher. In the same way, out of sympathy for others, words that I know to be true, unendearing, disagreeable, but helpful to developing the Dhamma, and with a sense of the proper time, meaning the right situation, I do say them. So words that are true, even though they might be unendearing and disagreeable, but they lead to developing the Dhamma. An authentic Dhamma teacher, the Buddha, has the courage to actually say them. That's an aspect of right speech. That's right speech in action. In the same way, out of sympathy for others, words that I know to be false, not helpful in developing the Dhamma, but are endearing and agreeable, meaning they'll make you feel good, I do not say them. And again, why? Somebody answer. Why wouldn't the Buddha say things that make you feel good?
Because it's not going to lead toward awakening.
Yes, thank you. And in that case, it's just distraction, isn't it?
Just
And
misleading.
yeah, and what could be more cruel from the Buddha standpoint, but also from someone hoping to learn the Dhamma. This sutta points to what we should look for in the Dhamma too, isn't it? And maybe in a Dhamma teacher. They have to know how to teach the Dhamma. So again, I'm conscious of how much that I spend a lot of time talking about what the Buddha's Dhamma isn't, but I do that for a very specific reason. And I learned it from the Buddha's teaching. So that people are clear about what the Dhamma is so they can practice it, and also clear about what it isn't so they can avoid it if they choose to. And again, that's what the Buddha's saying here. Just because something makes you feel good, just because a lot of your friends or associates or a whole lineage or a whole spiritual group, whatever they might be, are doing it, is no reason to do it. It's not reason enough alone. Is it truthful? And does it lead to developing a Dhamma? And if it's missing both of those components, it's simply not part of the Dhamma. And again, remember, we're talking about the Dhamma here. We're not talking about life in general, although as Dhamma practitioners, we take this teaching off of our cushion and learn to speak with right speech and answer questions within this framework of right speech in accordance with the Dhamma. The line where the Buddha showed his agreement to dinner by maintaining his silence is well known, that simply by not saying anything, he agreed to what was put in front of him. It's also a true teaching on what noble silence is. If there's not something useful or meaningful to say, keep your mouth shut. So noble silence is not something that is, okay, right now I'm not going to say anything and I'm going to practice noble silence. That's not practicing anything. It's just an escape from what's occurring. Noble silence is a practice of right speech. Silence is informed by the understanding that right now there's nothing to say for any reason at all. That's noble silence. Noble silence is not something that we just agree to not talk for a period of time. At least noble silence as far as the Buddha teaches. In the same way, out of sympathy for others, words know to be true, endearing, and agreeable, but are not helpful to developing the Dhamma, I do not say them. In the same way, out of sympathy for others, words that I know to be true, endearing, and agreeable, and are helpful in developing the Dhamma, with a sense of the proper time. Again, even when all of those, the situation determines whether I'm going to speak. With a sense of the proper time, I do say them.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
You just explained the true meaning of noble silence.
Mm-hmm.
Is that because when you speak, you resonate into somebody else, if somebody hears it and it resonates in their mind, and that gives them a disturbance in their mind? Is that reason? Or is that not the reason?
That's certainly one reason. Because if I know that what I'm going to say doesn't fit this category, these categories, then it's going to be disagreeable and distracting to you, so I keep my mouth shut. But in the same way, if my response to you is truthful and helpful to you or the group, in developing the Dhamma, then I have to respond as a Dhamma teacher. So it's not so much, let me make this personal for you. I know there's things that we've talked about in conversation, and our response wasn't immediately agreeable to you. But yet you stayed with it, and you didn't reject it because it didn't make you feel good immediately. And one of the reasons why is you had really taken refuge already in the Dhamma. You understood this as something beneficial to you. And whether you understood it at this deep level, you also understood that if there's a little bit of pain that goes along with it, it's okay. It isn't all about just feeling wonderful all the time.
No.
But you were never looking for an escape either.
No.
And that's so did I answer your question and give you?
Well, I was thinking it more of just a general conversation situation. The Buddha is saying if it doesn't lead to awakening or if it's not helpful, don't say it. So that's kind of like, you know.
When you're having a cup of tea with your neighbor?
Yeah.
I had a cup of tea with my neighbor and I didn't say anything because they didn't want to talk about the Dhamma. So I never know. I was just kidding. Again, this is about when you're teaching the Dhamma. This is what this is relating to. But I also understand what you're saying. So how do you engage in right speech in just general mundane conversation? You can still practice that it's true, it's not gossipy in any way, that it's helpful, and it's not falling on deaf ears. And it's okay if in meeting those requirements, you don't talk. It's okay to be quiet. But again, in social situations, if we're having lunch with a friend, it's also, you got to balance this in reality. It's kind of rude to just sit there and not talk. So, I mean, when I go out into social situations, I don't just insist on talking about the Dhamma, although I usually get back to it. I mean, I can talk about the Yankees or the weather and politics, although I try to avoid it. And that's just living in the world. But very often I don't do that a lot anyway, to be honest with you. I was thinking this the other day. There's so little idle chatter in my life. I mean, I'm really fortunate that it's developed that way. I'm not in situations where I need to engage in idle chatter. But even when I do, I find myself trying to pull it back into the Dhamma at times. And honestly, it's unpleasant to be in that situation for me too often, simply because I don't find there's nothing meaningful going on to me in that. In other words, I mean, how do I say this? I think if I found myself in true social situations, it's like every day, every night, going out to dinner or whatever I might be, I'd be very distracted by that, I think. I don't know how I can maintain it. But that's a gradual process, isn't it? Over time, my life has gotten much simpler, and my interactions with others have gotten much simpler.
So you're saying that you restrain in general conversation for the peace of your own mind?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Not for not wanting to bother somebody else's mind.
Yes, and I don't even in idle conversation or mundane conversation, I don't want to say anything that's going to mislead. I don't want to say I'm cautious about that. I just don't do it. I don't. And so I don't get into situations. Here's an example. I know I just thought about it. I used to go to a lot of AA meetings. I don't much at all because it's another story. I'm still involved in the community. And this is a couple of years ago. I was at a large meeting. There's usually about 100, 125 people there. And a couple of guys I know that are really, they're good guys, and they're, I mean, it sounds silly. They're I don't even know how to say this correctly, but they're men of good repute, except this one thing. I mean, they have families and they're professional. I don't know to portray that as they're better than other people. They're people you wouldn't expect what follows. So they both come up to me and they said they got this great joke they want to tell me. And it was one of the most disgusting, debasing, a common joke with sexual ramifications that men tend to tell each other. I don't know why. I could never understand even as a kid. But in the setting, in the place where people are coming for healing, to bring that up, the only thing I could do was to turn my back and walk away from them, because I didn't want to tell them anything else. So that was my practice of right speech. What else could I do? If I laughed, just to be in this situation, I'm saying, wow, that's really funny, and that talk and act with other people, isn't it? But I also knew that to condemn them or say that's awful, that's going to fall on deaf ears too. So I turned my back and walked away from them. the point that I'm making is there's some things might come up in general conversation that we shouldn't just accept. But in general, it's best to just be pleasant with people and engage in the conversation. But don't cross that line from encouraging other people's ignorance. Don't cross that line into gossip or condoning, and again, this is what's going on a lot, condoning hate by justifying it. Yeah, you're right. You should hate somebody because of how they're acting. We should never hate anybody, should we? That just hurts everybody. So am I answering your question? Yeah. Okay. Sorry for the long answer.
Is it gossip when you're exchanging political views?
Well, gossip is saying something about someone who's not there and really with the intent to diminish or hurt that person and the other person's
so
eyes.
most of the time that's what I do.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, well, but yeah,
pretty much
and
political
Anthony,
talk.
and thank you for saying it, because it is, and we should recognize that. There's no, even if the gossip is not necessarily true, is it? When I'm holding something up that somebody did and say, look at this guy, he's the biggest butthole in the world, that's gossip because it's hurtful. It doesn't mean we can't engage in political debate, but we don't do that anymore. We've taken politics and we've changed politics and made it religion. And that justifies both sides. When you're now the savior, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, you're saving the world now. This is a battle for saving the world. Then the other person is evil, isn't it? And they should be put in prison or whatever our response might be. That's hurtful. That's hurtful speech, isn't it? And wouldn't it be better if we just kept our mouth shut? If we couldn't get beyond our own ideology, keep your mouth shut, because you're just fueling the hatred that's in the world. And it's at the same time, at least maybe for me, I think for a lot of people, because I've never seen otherwise, like I was talking about these two friends of mine, I've never seen good, compassionate, honest, loving people justify being hateful. And that's where we're losing it. And then again, not just one side, it's both sides. We think basically somebody doesn't agree with me that I should hate them. They're evil, they're bad. And that's not debate, is it? We can't arrive anywhere when we take those positions. And so again, it's a practical way of living in the world. So to answer your question, yes, sorry, Anthony.
Knock it off.
Well, yeah, but not but. If
It's
we
very hard when the person at the top is doing it.
well think about it. Think about it. Think about.
Though, if you're speaking the truth, if you're merely saying power in
No, but I'm just saying when we have a president that condemns people and
Oh yeah.
and
And
lashes out and gossips and
But wait a minute.
vitriol. So
Wait,
it's very hard.
wait. You're doing just it. You're saying because he acts this way, my actions
No.
are justified.
No, I'm not justifying it. I'm just saying.
And
it's hard.
that's the same as saying you pissed me off. What is the difference there? And how can it? I get a little excited for a Dhamma class. How can it possibly help? It doesn't. Look at what's going on. And unfortunately, we're upset. Let me put it this way. It seems like the left or the Democrats are upset even at the things that Trump is doing, the accomplishments that he's making. Forget about the debate whether it's good or bad. Doesn't really matter. He is doing some things. He's acting in some ways presidential. But one half of the government is refusing to do anything right now. So there's no input into what he might be doing, is there? There's no balance at all. We're upset because this man is acting unilaterally, yet we're not willing to act bilaterally with him. And again, I'm getting a little bit of a rant, but whose fault is that? It's because of I'm stuck in my ideology and my view that I'm the savior.
I think that's the intent.
The intent of what?
I'll say Trump, creating this environment where he says something and you just want to hit somebody, you just want to get into an argument. And I think that's promoting the ability for things to be done that we should be stopping.
It is.
So,
it is.
So it requires us even to have more resolve, not to
more inner poise.
yeah,
Yes.
To just
It's just like
But it's hard to be bullied and not to fight back.
I know, but again, what's the most effective thing to do? It's not what's right or what we can excuse. We're talking about, the Dhamma now. We're not talking about justifying our behavior or justifying our hatred. We're understanding that hatred is wrong. And the things that we do to justify it are just as wrong. And maybe it's even more wrong, if I can put that label on it, because it continues it. I imagine a world where people are, or enough people are understanding that recognize that poor man, he's rooted in ignorance, and look at how he's acting. Perhaps we can sit down and talk with him and suggest he does something differently, rather than spend 24 hours on news programs talking about how awful he is and how much we should hate him and how much he should be in prison and all his whole family and everyone else. I mean, this is really, I'm not defending him. I'm just saying it's no way to govern. And we have 2 more years. We live in a country that uses a certain system. I think it's hardly perfect, but I think it's the best system in the world for people to live in some measure of freedom. And it's called democracy. What that means, the unfortunate flaw in democracy is the great majority, or not even a great majority, a small majority of people may not agree with me. But I still got to live in the world peacefully, don't I? And if that's the case, if I'm that concerned about it, then maybe I might want to engage in peaceful and mindful dialogue for the next 2 years and change who might be the next one. That's all. And that's what we live in. And in that way, I'm affecting positive change, or at least I'm holding out the possibility for positive change, aren't I? Rather than just keeping all this hatred going. So let me continue. Lord, when others have questions for you and approach you know you will answer. This is the prince's question to Buddha. Lord, when others have questions for you and approach you, do you know how you will answer? And do you formulate a response in the moment? I will counter question you, Prince. Answer how you see fit. Are you skilled in the parts of a chariot? Yes, I am skilled in the parts of a chariot. Well, Prince, when people ask you about the parts of a chariot, do you know how you will answer, or do you formulate a response in the moment? Great teacher, I am known as an expert in the parts of a chariot. As such, I formulate a response in the moment. Well, Prince Abhaya, in the same manner, when others question me, I formulate a response in the moment. I formulate a response in the moment because I thoroughly understand the Dhamma. It's another important teaching there. Don't be talking about something that you don't know anything about. And I can tell you, I spent a good portion of being an expert on so many things that I knew nothing about. But I would insist that you had to believe me. And I can remember even thinking about it afterwards. How upset I'd be if you didn't believe my own BS. If you were smart enough to button up, really, there was something wrong with you that I wasn't. It's such insane thinking, but yet we do that, don't we? We put these fabrications out there, and we want people to believe them. Most importantly, we want to keep believing them ourselves. When this was said, Prince Abhaya replied, "Magnificent, Lord. It is magnificent. It is as if you have set upright what was overturned, revealed what was hidden, shown a clear path to one lost, and carried a lamp into the darkness for those with eyes to see. Through many lines of reasoning, you have made the Dhamma clear. I now take refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. Remember me as a follower from this day forward." That's the end of the sutta. You got him. The other component about it, and sometimes it's lost because the Buddha was so unconventional and radical in his approach. The same idea that everything is wonderful and we should all just live in peace, we should all just get along, was common, just as common during the Buddha's time. That's why he taught this way. And it's so cruel to think that way, isn't it? We're going to start a series probably in a week or two on the 3 marks of existence going over the summer, because I really want to put a little emphasis, or a little more emphasis, on what dukkha really is, on what stress and suffering really is, and how it relates to the views that we're holding. And it's just that way. And by the way we frame our questions And the way we answer those questions, whether it's from a teacher or have the questions answered within our own insight through the Eightfold Path, is paramount, isn't it? We're not looking for revelations. We're looking for understanding. That means that we need to keep ourselves focused on reality, not looking for constant distraction by what makes me feel good. Even in the Buddha's teachings on the 4 foundations of mindfulness, the first thing the Buddha teaches is to be mindful of the breath in the body, to unite the breath into what's occurring right here, right now. And the next thing he says is notice feelings. He didn't say do anything with it. And if you have a good feeling, pile on. He said notice that feelings are impermanent. They arise and they pass away. Notice that thoughts arise and pass away. Notice sometimes thoughts attached to a feeling, meaning an emotion, arises and passes away. So even if I have found a great teacher, a great orator that can make me feel good, what happens when I leave? Well, maybe I feel good for an hour. But then I find that the dog did something I don't want to do. Thinking about it. He never does. Bodhi. And now I'm out of it. Now I'm miserable because my life doesn't work. I got a bad dog. And I got that person that I have to face tomorrow in the car. You lost it. You lost it because of one thing. You weren't able to maintain your mind. You lost your mind. The Buddha teaches a way to maintain our mindfulness, to be mindful of what's occurring no matter what, by not wanting anything to be different, especially the Dhamma. So that's 2 teachings today. Hey, but good to see you.
Wonderful to be here. I was trying to think back of when I first started practicing with you.
It was in Regalsville, wasn't it?
Yes, and just how wonderful it was. Such a life-altering experience in such a very unexpected and very subtle way. And I don't want to be anywhere else. I love the path. I know it's hard. I know it's you keep peeling the layers, and after all the layers, there's still more. And it's like, how much more noble silence do I have to learn, and how much more not self do I have to? But I wouldn't want to be in another place, going another path.
Thank you. It's really worth it, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And what you understand about the Dhamma now is really quite different. You've developed an understanding of it, and it's
repetition is important.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah, it is.
You learn it, wow. Then suddenly the second time, it's like you see a whole other perspective that you totally missed.
Yeah.
You weren't able to catch that first time.
Yeah. Yeah, and even that repetition is very subtle. In other words, this isn't really a direct teaching on impermanence, isn't it? Yet it is. And they're not self-characteristic and suffering. It's how to understand it. So thank you. Lorna, good morning.
Morning. How's the noble sound?
Glad you're here. Greg, good to see you.
Good to see you, John. Yeah, the right speech, I think, is probably one of the harder ones, personally. And I think it seems to come directly from the mindfulness and meditation as far as being able to identify and restrain some of the thoughts exiting the mouth. So in that sense, I think, I don't think the Buddha was engaged in politics to the extent that he met with princes and kings.
All the
right?
time.
So
All the time.
it wasn't that he completely cut himself off. He just knew what to say and when to who, where,
Yes.
context. And we see today people that are not mindful of the emotions. Things escape the mouth, and then they can be used against them. Their hypocrisies are exposed.
Yeah.
They end up falling into traps that were intentionally set.
Yep.
And I think that's why I find mindfulness and meditation to be probably the most radical and revolutionary political thing you can do. Even if that's not the intended purpose, it's a nice little side effect. So,
Yeah. It's just that way. And an important aspect of right speech is recognizing this story we keep telling ourselves. You know, that ongoing conversation. And it's really at that point that we practice the most subtle levels of right speech, the story that's going on in our mind. And it's also such a, for one thing, right speech is the entry point for most people to the Dhamma. That's the first, and it makes sense because we're always talking, aren't we? Whether it's to others or towards ourselves. So it's the most obvious way that we can start practicing the Dhamma at that point of contact where I'm opening my mouth or where I'm saying things to others. Getting back to noble silence and right speech, one of the reasons why, main reason why I run my retreats the way I retreat, the way I do, not silent, is because it gives us an opportunity to practice right speech moment by moment. And Kevin, how was that? I mean, we really focused on it this last retreat, but it's
excellent.
Yeah, just being in that environment and being mindful of it. Yeah, it really it's a profound experience in the Dhamma.
I mean, I've sat 10-day silent retreats, and being silent was easy. But then on the last day, when you're allowed to start talking, that's the true test, because things just come out, and you're like, oh, I should just not be talking. Especially some of the things that just immediately within an hour, Dhamma's just gone, and people are talking about, sitting silently for days is not really a hard thing. It's when you do have to talk that it's much more complicated.
Yeah, and again, you spent 10 days doing what you wanted to do and the group wanted to do, and yet there was 10 days that you could have been spent learning what right speech is, isn't it? In an experiential way with each other in an agreed format. This is what we're doing. We're here to learn the Dhamma, not escape reality by this forced silence. And again, it's not something that Buddha ever taught. I know it's, how most people think that silence is noble, has no component of right speech to it, but that's okay. As far as noble silence in relation to what the Buddha taught, it's informed by right speech, not just by agreed upon periods of silence. I went on many of those 7 and 10 day sessions, and the best thing you heard me say, the best thing about those is that they came to an end. Honestly, and I always felt I'm missing something, because that's how it's taught. If you're not really getting this, if you didn't awaken now, it's because you're doing something wrong, or you just need more time. And that's how I put it on myself.
Maybe they're just trying to drive home the point of impermanence.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, Mary, because one of the modern movements of this type of meditation practice, meaning mostly just meditation, mostly just vipassana, by the way, just silence leading to insight, is just that. It's just notice the impermanence of what's going on around you. Notice the impermanence of your thoughts. That sounds pretty close to what the Buddha teaches, but there's no framework for understanding it. And that's the problem. So people, they come to these great realizations. I had one. I was sitting, I can still remember it. And I remember where I was. I was up in Phoenicia, New York, at Zen Mountain Monastery, a beautiful place. I was sitting in meditation. And the visual I had was, and I was thinking about this mountain in Hawaii. And in my meditation, I didn't realize how distracted I was. I couldn't have thought this. In my mind's eye, the mountain, the volcano just kind of disintegrated. It didn't just sink, it disintegrated into the ocean. And I came out of it thinking, wow, now I understand impermanence. I saw a mountain disappear in front of me. Well, no mountain disappeared in front of me. It disappeared in my mind. I made it up. But to me, that was a powerful teaching on impermanence. It did not. It was just a great distraction. And I thought about that great understanding. In fact, I remember talking to one of the teachers, and he kind of reaffirmed it. Yes, that's what impermanence is all about. Mountains aren't even permanent. I didn't need 10 days of silence to understand that either. I know mountains aren't permanent. What good did it do me? Honestly, that did nothing to give me an understanding of what I was looking for, which is what's going on with me. So it was a waste of time. Nobody misinformed me. But that's the way it was. So good question. I think that's 3 talks today. Anthony, good to see you.
Good morning. I was sitting there trying to distill the rules of speech in my head. Is it truthful? Is it necessary? Is it helpful? Is it timely? Is it open to being received?
Yeah.
Did I get it?
Yeah. Yeah. It's all those things. I mean, you can kind of simplify it by saying, is what I'm about to say helpful? And if it's not, we keep our mouth shut. Helpful to myself too. I mean, as we start developing concentration, we'll find ourselves in patterns of thought that we'll realize, wait a minute, this is not something good to think about. And what do you do when you got, if it's a conditioned thought, it's going to keep coming up. But every time you just let it go and come back to the sensation of breathing, you're diminishing your conditioned response. So every time hatred of someone comes up and you want to justify it or talk about it or call your friend and say, did you hear what this guy just said now? Take a breath. Realize, don't take any of that personally, because it's not. In fact, if you believe the rhetoric, you're taking something personal from a person that you think is insane. Does that make any sense? No. Despite the power. That's the next question. That's the point. No matter what's occurring in the world, and by the way, this may seem like the gravest time in the history of the world. It's not by far. We just celebrated the 75th anniversary of a time when the world was in much graver state. What we kind of forget about that. We think that these petty little politics are making something much worse than they are. They're not, by the way.
Yeah. The big thing I got from this is that it's not always good to be nice to people and compliment them about things that aren't true.
Never.
That can be tough when you feel people need to be validated in some way, but you're giving false validation.
Yes.
And it can be very tough because you don't want to be mean and you don't want to say nothing, so sometimes you say things that are a little too kind for that person.
Yeah, and that's a real fine line, and we shouldn't drive ourselves crazy over it and be so micro focused on, is this, On the other hand, as we develop the Eightfold Path and integrate it more into our lives, that just comes naturally. And what people feel more, just to use the word, is my mindful presence with them, rather than my being distracted by me wanting them to be different or not to be whatever it is.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, please.
When I took the mindfulness training class, one of the things we did was to sit there and listen to someone talking for 5 minutes, and we couldn't say anything. And what shocked me is there were like 40 of us, and 39 of the people speaking said they didn't mind the other person saying nothing.
Wow.
But the people who were saying nothing felt very troubled by it.
Yeah.
And it just shows you that most of the time people just want to be heard.
Yeah. And why do they want to be heard? Because I need to keep promoting me. I mean, that really is it. The main reason why idle chatter is such a powerful example of the Dhamma is because idle chatter is an ongoing experience of self-establishment, isn't it? Let me tell you what I think. This is how I feel. So what? I mean, again, I'm not saying we should never have a conversation, but maybe we talk a little too much. And maybe we look for other avenues for what is speech. Look at, some of the modern day millionaires were made because they understood the incessant compulsive need to keep talking, including twitting or tweeting, whatever that is.
Yeah, and when you interject, you often take the conversation in a different direction. You're not listening as well, and the person isn't getting to say all the things they want to say because you now took it in a new direction.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So there's understand. So this talk is you can say it's a talk on right speech. Let me see what that said. But right speech is also the way to establish directly, viscerally in this moment, a calm and peaceful mind. Because if my speech and actions are following from a well-concentrated mind framed by the refined mindfulness, every word that I say will be conducive towards establishing common peace in my mind and in the world. Another way of saying that is ending conflict. When there's no conflict left within me, there's no possible conflict that could come out of my mouth, is there? It just couldn't. So Greg brought up a good point. The Buddha talked often with heads of state, with people in governance, and he talked with right speech. In other words, people be surprised when he knew that this particular king was going to go to war against this other. He didn't say, well, no, you can't kill anybody. Don't do that. That's bad. That's hurtful. Because he knew it was unrealistic. It would have been idle chatter to say war is bad in that setting, because war is bad, but it's not going to stop it, is it? So what the Buddha did, was he would counsel leaders like that when you win, this is how you treat the people that you just conquered. You treat them with dignity and kindness. You give them stuff, give them food, make them feel good, give them medicine. That was practical teaching, wasn't it? That's right speech. Some people would say, well, right speech, he's condoning war. No, he's not condoning war. He didn't encourage it. He just understood that it's not going to end right now. And that relates to the first noble truth and that profound understanding that suffering occurs in the world, not because of evil actors, as we would like it to be, or because evil is working through people. Evil occurs in the world because of ignorance of Four Noble Truths. And so the solution, not a likely one, but the solution then would be to end ignorance, not to end all the evil actors and put all the evil actors in jail. We've never done it. It's one of the things that kind of surprising to me. We haven't figured out how to legislate behavior ever. We just think that in varying levels of degrees, that if someone is offensive to us, we get them out of society one way or the other. Rather than looking at, and in some ways we have to do that. We're a violent people. We can't shut all the prisons down. But we should Why aren't we looking at the real problem? A better way for me to say this, all these years later, and we haven't figured out that we're doing something wrong, even in this country. We're starting to address it a little bit, aren't we? Criminal justice reform is a pretty big thing, I think. But anyway, getting off the top. Mary, good to see you.
Good to be here. You have a very relevant suit, as they all are.
Yeah.
When I get in a situation where I'm not going to change anything, say, let's talk about the politics. I see it going on. There's no point in dwelling on it and, fetching about it, because there's nothing I'm going to do to change that right now.
Yeah.
And when I have the opportunity to do something positive to change it, say donating to a candidate or voting,
Yeah.
that's what I do.
Yeah.
And I can't make myself crazy over it, because you can't. It's just not healthy.
Yeah. And you're able to maintain a calm and peaceful mind.
Yeah.
And do things that are, my description of, it's an apt description of awakening is full human maturity. And so you are acting in a fully mature way, aren't you? Instead of railing against this and that and getting other people upset.
Yeah. And there's no point. It just makes me more upset. So.
Yeah. And let's, I think about, I did my hourly, actually it was a little bit more this past week, of watching the rhetoric. And I don't know that I've ever seen this level of anger in people, in both sides. Why do they want to live like that? Really, it saddens me that.
I think part of the problem is that we're not dealing with a rational person, and that's.
Yeah, but again, why would we justify our own irrationality and blame it on someone else?
Yeah, it's just. I think it's just a trigger.
Contagious.
Well, that's a good point, though. That the ignorance in the world does spread, and again, we can blame. If we're going to play the blame game, it's something else I shouldn't go. If we're going to play the blame game, why do we stop at Donald Trump? Why don't we take it a generation further and say, well, his father, right, and probably his mother, but wait a minute, his grandfather was a scoundrel too, and let's go further back.
Mental health issue. I look at it all as a mental health issue.
Yeah.
Period.
Yep. And that's really what the, what the
He's not
Dhamma
a
is
full,
about.
mature.
Yeah.
I can't
Well,
apply
but
logic to it. I mean, it's not going to work.
it isn't. And I mean, he's the immediate one, so he's the one that's getting all the heat. But if we really wanted to feel this way just about any president, we could pick one in my lifetime, and they all qualify. They're all scoundrels in one way or another, you know.
Maybe
So-
not Jimmy Carter.
Jimmy Carter had some other things. I agree. He was one of the most loving and compassionate presidents we ever had. But I would say he probably wasn't a very good president, as effective. So, you know, he's a wonderful man.
Can I just say I see very clearly, like in this moment, though, also the if you think of it, a bully school and how you how they often have their own emotional issues, personal issues, family issues, and if you treat them, I mean, I remember the bullies at school were the most, maybe not initially, but they ended up being the most bullied kids, and they lashed out more. You know, it never helps.
Yep.
They lashed out more. They felt more isolated, alienated, angry, and just started doing more and more ridiculous things until eventually they weren't there one day. They were incarcerated or whatever. And it's kind of our responsibility as the more mature individuals to, sadly, you know, try and do something about breaking that cycle. And even if it's not welcome or received, I guess.
Yeah. It is. It's a big problem in school. I think it's even more so today, haven't it? That, what do they call it? Shaming people on social media. I mean, that's a form of bullying, isn't it?
I mean, I almost feel bad when I look at the news sometimes and see, like, yeah, I've tried to avoid directly saying it, or, you know, but yeah, Trump is he's a bully, but he's getting brutally bullied, and everyone says, well, he deserves it because he brought this on himself.
Yeah.
And, you know, but it's so hard to be above that. But, you know, it's what we teach kids, but and then we see that adults aren't practicing it on either side.
I mean, world leaders aren't practicing it, much less, you know, our
And
neighbors.
it's sometimes it's hilarious when people are, you know, mocking them and messing with them in foreign countries and doing these things. And it's
That's
it's
awful.
entertaining sometimes, but then it's really, you know, what is it doing to inflict more injury upon this person with such a fragile ego, the way they're going to lash out,
And our country too. I mean, that really is unheard of, I think, in the past, that we would have that kind of negative rhetoric while a president, forget about who he is visiting another country, especially on a state visit. But yet our president did the same thing while he was on foreign soil too, didn't he? And we really, yeah. And so again, he's not the only, he's not the only one though. We got to be clear about that. If they would simply, and the world would be a much better place if they would just make me emperor, because then I'd have, but if we just left him alone, let him say whatever he wants and let him be whatever kind of president he wants. And in 2 years, hopefully there's someone that's better than him.
Well, that shouldn't be hard to find.
It shouldn't be hard to find, but honestly, right now, what's that?
Said I would be better than
Mary, please run. That's something else that I don't want to get too deep into. It's an interesting. The Chinese say it's good to live in interesting times. It certainly is an interesting time, and it's not when Armageddon isn't right around the corner. It just isn't. So, Kevin, good to see you.
Good to see you, John. Thank you. It's a really important teaching. It really gotten a lot of emotion out of us, and it stirs up a lot of emotion.
Yeah, I hope not too much.
Yeah, but I think with knowing the teaching and following the path, we will each in our own lives try to exercise right speech.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. And I would bet that each and every one of us can honestly say that you've contributed to peace and calm in your life, in your own life and the people around you. Right, Greg?
Try.
I know you have. I know you have. And that really, that's the bottom line, isn't it? And even to evaluate a Dhamma practice, it's making me more peaceful. It's diminishing conflict in my mind, and so I'm not contributing to conflict in the world. I'm more peaceful than the people around me are, and I know that that's true, even though I don't spend too much time talking about it. Any other questions or comments on today's sutta? Yeah, it's a great sutta. Like I said, in a week or two, maybe 3, we're going to start a summer series on the 3 marks of existence and get into really understanding dukkha at that point of contact, because that's where we can recognize it and abandon our contribution to it. We'll finish with metta, as we always do. So find your relaxed meditative posture. And again, take a moment to become mindful of your sensation of breathing in your body, your in-breath and your out-breath. And these are the Buddha's words on metta from the Karaniya Metta Sutta. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud or demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. Wishing in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings. Radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will. Whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Thank you all for a wonderful class this morning. Peace.
Dedicate that to Trump.
Lorna, may I have a word with you after class? Not right now.
Yeah.